if a jury were to examine the evidence of life, of evolution, all these things, what would they come to? What kind of a verdict would they come to? So we do this all the time, and I'm going to open up with a little parable or Aesop fable. Only it's not Aesop, so it's probably not going to be nearly as cool. But there's a lot of there was recently a movie that came out, Mission to Mars or something. I think it had Matt Damon in it, and we were constantly intrigued by the possibility of finding aliens, right? Life on Mars, life on other planets, or whatever. Is there life on other planets? Well, what would that look like if we were to go to Mars? Let's just take Mars. We could say Jupiter, Pluto. Pluto will forever be a planet to me, by the way. I don't care if they take it away or not. Pluto is a planet. It is my planet. But if we took a trip to Mars and we were able to get people there examining the atmosphere, examining, the various geological landscapes and all this stuff, what would it look like for us to say, oh, there was at least one time there was life on Mars? So let's pretend we jump in the spaceship, we get there, and we find, in our searching, we find a rock. A rock. And the rock has scribbled on it, "We are Martians. We are here." That's it. Very clear. Not like, God's face in my cereal or anything like that. I mean, it was very clear. It says, "We are Martians. We are here." This is a discovery on Mars. They discovered a rock, and on the rock it says, "We are Martians. We are here." The newspapers the next day, what would the newspapers say? Yeah, just English, something we could understand. Or we could even say it was symbols. Let's say there was a codex. We found these symbols on this rock, but it was more than just like carvings. I mean, it was symbols. And then somewhere else we found something to decode these symbols. Okay? And it said, "We are Martians, we are here." Either way, this is going to work for this thought exercise. The next day in the newspapers, what would the newspapers say? Would the newspapers say, "Evidence of life on Mars"? Or would the newspapers say, "Amazing tribute to the power and glory of evolution"? How that the elements came together and smashed against this rock over millions of years and put this message on there for us to discover. Wow, the beauty of it. Yeah, it could even be it could be the Russians. But again, see, that's the kind of conclusion that we would come to. Maybe even time travel. Could it, if it was in English, we probably would be like, "Oh my goodness. We know we've never been here. Could another people have been here?" But I can promise you there'd be speculation in the papers. And as soon as somebody came out with Martians, well, somebody else would have to come out with some other theory to sell papers, right? And have a bunch of experts on the show and all that stuff. But how many newspapers do you think would sell if the headline was "Evolution Proved"? And what's the evidence? There's a message on a rock. No, nobody would postulate that. I don't think even the most ardent atheists out there, I mean, die hard, it doesn't matter, their faith is so strong in evolution and atheism, there's no God. They wouldn't say, they'd say, "Oh my goodness, there's got to be life or time travel or something." I mean, that's what everybody would think. And it would be very reasonable to do so. Very logical to do so. What's that called, though? Were we there? Did we see it? Did we see the Martians marking on the rock? No. That's called inference to the best explanation. It's abductive reasoning. We know certain things about nature and about the things we observe, and so we would infer an explanation based on what we do know. And we do this all the time. We do this all the time. Just this morning, I walked out of my house and I felt something kind of right along here. And did I see it? No. Did I stop and do a 20-minute science experiment? No. I presumed, oh, I just walked through a spider web. Well, did I see it? Do I know that for a fact? Exactly. See, somebody was like, oh, yeah, spider web. No, I inferred that based on what? The evidence that I do see. I inferred that based on the evidence that I do see. We do this all the time. Scientists do this long before they've ever been able to see anything under... Ooh, hope nobody's scared of spiders. Long before they've been able to observe certain things under microscopes or with special equipment, scientists make inferences based on the testing that they do and based on what they can see, and they operate based off of that unless there's something that says, no, this is clear evidence or proof that this is not true. They infer. We do this all the time. Juries convict people to death, to a life in prison. Now, juries are not specialists. I don't know if you know much about jury selection, but they don't go out into the community and say, well, hey, we have a case here. We got a lot of forensic evidence, so we want to get a bunch of forensic scientists on this jury. They get you and they get me, and they get people sometimes who don't have a clue about much of anything. It's just random people coming onto a jury, right? And what do? They look at evidence that's far beyond. I can't understand everything there is to know about DNA. Oh, I could, and most people probably could if they spent their life doing this stuff, but they don't expect the jury to become experts in all these fields. They don't expect a jury to even become an expert in the law and jurisprudence. They only expect them to look at the evidence and make a reasonable assessment. They infer. Now, barring a videotape that's very clearly the suspect killing somebody, even then I'm sure the defense attorney would try, well, it's kind of blurry, that's kind of stuff. But what do juries do? They look at the evidence and they infer the best explanation. Well, this person is the suspect, and we found the blood on their shoes, and there was an altercation the night before, and the murder weapon was found in their house, and right on and on and on. Could we infer that there was a grand government conspiracy? Friends got together and were bought off by the cops, and the cops just had it out for this person. And the way the blood got on the shoes is somebody snuck into their room and put the bloody, the shoes into the blood, and so there's bloody footprints and all. Could that be the case? Yeah, it's definitely possible, but is that the best explanation? No, the best explanation is this dude went into a rage, went over their house, and killed him. Right? That's what we do all the time. And yet, when it comes to something so vitally important of what your worldview is going to be, because an atheist's worldview is very different from, say, a Christian worldview. It's very different. Things they believe, ways they think they should behave, they are very different. Most of the time, not all the time. I think there's atheists that can be very moral and very all that stuff. We'll talk about that in another one of these tidbits here. But right now we're focusing just on the idea of, again, we went to Mars. We found a rock. The rock had, we are Martians. We are 6 words on it. And everybody inferred everything else except that just the wind and the elements came together. And wow, the beauty and miracle of evolution. Nobody would say that. You wouldn't see boneheads like Bill Nye and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, and they would not get out there on a TV show on Fox News or CNN and be like, yeah, I don't think any of these things is true. There's no Martians. There's no life on Mars. That message on that rock was carved there by the and then, of course, in an English accent, you sound smarter. It was carved there millions of years ago by the beauty of evolution. No, it wouldn't happen. Now let's kick it up a notch. Let's kick it up a notch. Let's say instead of a rock with a message, let's say they found what appears to be a toy or some kind of a model of, we're not sure what it is because it's nothing we use. It's not a car, it's not a truck, but it's clearly, it's got movable parts. It's something small, something simple, like a kid's toy. But it's clearly designed. I mean, it's got joints on it, it's got maybe a hinge on it, different things. Maybe the metals are things that, are off of Mars and it's not stuff that we have here. But think about it. Now, instead of just a simple message, now it's a little more complex, right? What would we now think? Let's kick it up a notch. Let's say they found a cell phone or something, not an Apple phone or an Android phone, but it's clearly some kind of communication device. It's got dials and readouts on it, and it lights up. There's what seems to be like a power button on it. You press this button and it comes on and stuff happens, right? What would we think? And there's all kinds of things we would think. Oh, there's some kind of crazy conspiracy going on. Somebody sent this. Maybe a crashed. Could there have been a crashed? I don't know. Could there be a crash? God, put it there for us to find. Possibly, right? But who? Think about it. I just want you guys to do this thought exercise with me. If you believe, think about it. Think about it honestly. If you don't, if you think, man, those people are a bunch of nuts. God is just Santa Claus for grown-ups, and you think that, okay, that's a fair assessment. I think that's fair. But can you be honest and say, if this happened, if we went to Mars and if we found just a structure, just 4 walls and a roof, not complicated in any way, shape, or form, would we say, wow, man, look at the beauty of evolution. Look what this has done. This is proof positive that evolution can come together and make brick and mortar and put a roof on. No, we would say someone lived here. Why would we think that? Because we infer based on what we know. What do we know? It takes intelligence to do something like this.